Frances was one of the most beautiful faces of Hollywood in the 1930s. She was born on September 19, 1913, in Seattle, Washington, the third child of Lillian and Ernest Farmer. Her father was laid back and quiet, while her mother was headstrong. Frances grew up to be not only very beautiful, but also intelligent and strong. In her teenage years, she was not just a happy go lucky young lady. She was serious in life, a teenager who was really trying to figure out her ways in the world. She enrolled as a journalism student in the University of Washington, but was drawn more in theater and plays. She was even proclaimed as a young woman destined for Broadway. In her final year of college in 1935, Frances won a contest for the leftist newspaper The Voice of Action and won a trip to the Soviet Union to which her mother strongly disagreed with. Frances still chose to visit the country and saw the Moscow Art Theater. It just fueled her desire in acting. Frances moved to Manhattan, New York when she was just 21 to pursue her dream in Broadway. She felt that Hollywood was not for her. However, as she was not able to work for plays, she signed a 7-year movie contract with Paramount Pictures. In 1936, she had her first movie called Too Many Parents, which became a great hit and started her fame. She then met Leif Erikson, another actor whom she really liked working together with. And to avoid being asked to go on publicity dates with other young men, she spent more and more time with him, and in that same year they eloped in Arizona. In just 5 months, she has become one of the most famous young actresses in Hollywood and newly married to a strikingly good looking husband. She had another movie in that same year, which became another box office hit. In her next movie, she had paved the way for women in Hollywood. In those early years of entertainment industry, women were expected not to be difficult, almost like people were expecting women to just obey and do whatever it is being asked of them. Frances was not going to let that happen to her. She was very vocal on her suggestions about the role she was playing, like about her costumes and clothes and other matters related to her character. The first director was good to her, but then he was replaced with another director who rejected her suggestions and ideas. The pressure to play her role and finish the movie was really great. She was still able to perform wonderfully, and the film also showcased her incredible voice. Her mother Lillian was so happy she became a famous actress. It was one of the few times of their life that they really got along. She was supporting her mother financially as well. In her next movies, Frances stayed true to the stories and characters she played. She often clashed with directors and co actors as she always wanted to perfectly portray and act. She did not just want to act for views or money, she wanted to always preserve the integrity of the story in which she plays. In Hollywood, especially those times, it was seen as arrogance, and it earned her a lot of enemies. Despite all that, she became one of the Paramount's greatest stars. Although her movies were a great hit and she has a high status in the industry, she was wise enough to know that the quality of the roles she was getting did not improve. She continued to work hard and did her very best every time. Until she was approached to work in a play with the most prominent actors and actresses. She shined and convinced that she belonged in a theater. She fell in love with a married playwright named Clifford Odets. They began an affair. It was said that he was the love of her life, but she realized Clifford was only using her for money. She was so famous and they needed to keep the theater afloat. When Clifford broke up with her, she was so heartbroken, and that's when she started drinking. She returned to Paramount and to her husband Lee. They acted in a movie together in 1938 called Ride a Crooked Mile. She then discovered she was pregnant. However, her husband convinced her to have an abortion, as he was just starting his career and fame at that time. She agreed to have an abortion, which resulted to her not being able to have any child ever again. Frances was so heartbroken and devastated, she decided to divorce her husband and return to the group theater where she played for a few more shows. Although she had a job as an actress in the group theater, Frances was often alone in her apartment drinking heavily. She might have felt that life was truly horrible, as she did not have anybody with her. Her career was not doing so well either. In 1940, she went back to Hollywood and was casted in more movies. She prepared very well for her comeback. She rented a lavish apartment and bought clothes fitting a famous Hollywood actress. But things have changed. The roles that she had been given are mostly supporting roles. She felt unsuccessful, depressed, lonely, and just devastated. She began taking drugs combined it with alcohol. It was said that when she was sober, she was this elegant and graceful lady, but when she was drunk, she acted like a truck driver. She still worked in few more roles after that, but when she got arrested in one of her drunken nights, the news of her arrest spread like wildfire in Hollywood. She knew she was not going to get job in acting with a good quality role she longed to have. She then had to move to a hotel, one of the cheapest in the area. She worked in another theater, but she was so changed because of the use of drugs and alcohol. She was seen talking to an imaginary dog, sometimes singing and shouting in inappropriate times. She basically hit rock bottom. On one occasion, she had lost her temper and hit her hairdresser, Edna, with a hairbrush, dislocating her jaw. When Edna pressed charges, the police discovered that there was already an arrest warrant for drunk driving and still owed them money. The police broke into her apartment to arrest her. She was sleeping in bed naked at that time. She was so shocked, she ran into the bathroom, but then the police broke the door and took her by force. She was clothed when the media photographed her in the lobby, but because of alcohol blackout, she couldn't remember what made the police do that to her. Francis also made a scene at the station and told the police things that made them so angry. She even raised her voice to the judge. She was given 180 days sentence. Frances was moved to a psychiatric ward in Los Angeles General Hospital in 20th of January 1943. Her mother was so ashamed of what happened, flew from Seattle and tried to take care of things for Frances. She agreed Frances needed to go to a sanitarium. Despite hundreds of thousands she had earned in acting, she did not have any money at that point. The Screen Actors Guild came to rescue and helped her get into one of the psychiatric hospitals. It was reported that because the doctors were unable to control her hyper emotional outbursts, they had to prescribe her the program of 90 insulin shock treatment, which caused her to go into brief comas. Frances was released 8 months later and told her mother she was giving up her acting career. She had given thought of her life and wanted to save herself, and she wanted to find a life with a purpose where she could grow. Her mother was not happy with this. Lillian wanted Frances to continue working in Hollywood for money. She had created a lifestyle for herself that only can be sustained if Frances continued to give her money. In one of their arguments, Lillian reported that Frances had threatened to kill her. Lillian used that to admit Frances at Western State Hospital on March 24, 1944. There, Frances was diagnosed as schizophrenic and insane. She received numerous electroshock treatment, and when she was defiant, they would give her hydrotherapy, which means they would submerge her in an icy waters naked and left there for hours. After months of this horrific treatment, Frances was considered cured and was returned to her mother's care. While with her mother, Frances made several attempts to run away, and so her mother sent her back to the asylum. The doctors said that she was so insane and no hope of being cured. They shaved her head and threw her in the ward for violent patients. After 5 years in the mental institution in 1950, she was released back to the custody of her parents in the purpose of caring for her aging parents. She was to be in house arrest. In 1953, 3 years of caring for her aging parents and fearing her mother would have her committed again, Frances demanded to have a hearing to restore her independence. She was told that she was free from her parents since 1951. It was something they kept from her. She was again devastated and heartbroken. She arranged another carer for her parents and took a job as an attendant in an Olympic hotel. She then began to drink again. Surely Frances was using alcohol to drown the sadness and pain she had felt for years of abuse and having nobody to truly love and care for her. She might have felt the need of stability and security. In 1954, she married a civil engineer named Alfred, but only spent 6 months in marriage. She left him and settled in California under her former name, Frances Anderson. She rented a room at a boarding house. She also had a job at a photography studio and went to church every Sunday. She was in no intention of going back to the spotlight until in 1957 when she met Lee Mikesell. Lee Mikesell was a traveling salesman who just became so obsessed with Frances. She wanted to bring the Frances farmer back. Frances was hesitant at first, but then Mike was able to convince her. He helped her arrange her divorce from Alfred, the engineer, and helped her be sober again. He also helped her have a job as a receptionist at San Francisco Palace Hotel and then notified the press. In June of that same year, Ed Sullivan invited Frances to be on his own show where she sang. It was obvious that she was very nervous, but then she was able to perform very well. The reaction from the public was warm and caring. When Frances saw this, she became willing to come back to Hollywood. Very shortly, she was offered jobs again in movies and shows. In 1958, she was invited to a show called This Is Your Life. You can see the tremendous pain and sadness when she was led to bring those memories back. Later that year, she married Lee Mikesell and accepted a movie role and then went on to perform in a play. After that, she was offered to have her own show, Frances Farmer Presents. She would introduce the afternoon movies and interview celebrities. She began having the respect and admiration of the public, which boosted her self esteem, and she began loving the life she was having. In 45 years old, Frances was even named Businesswoman of the Year and developed a friendship with a woman called Jean Radcliffe. In 1962, Frances was named Actress in Residence in Purdue University. She appeared in a number of classic plays. However, despite of this amazing comeback into the world of Hollywood and Broadway, Frances was fired from her TV show in 1964 in the reason of her drinking. I remember in the book, though, that she was not an alcoholic anymore at this time and only had problems with the production, so they came up with a reason to fire her. Jean and Frances moved to a farmhouse outside of town for the first time in her entire life. Frances was able to gain friends who were true to her. Over the next few years, Frances went on to reading poetries, working in local business community, and working on her autobiography. Frances seemed to live a happy and fulfilling life, something that she had strived for all her life. In April 1970, Frances was diagnosed with cancer of esophagus. She was admitted to the charity ward of the Indianapolis Hospital. On the 1st of August, Frances died of cancer. She was only 56. 2 years later, her autobiography was published. Frances Farmer, Will There Really Be a Morning? There were a lot of rumors surrounding her book. People said it was her friend Jean who finished it for her, and that she even replaced some parts of the book to make it more sensationalized to get more sale. There was another autobiography called Shadowland by William Arnold that claimed Frances was subjected to lobotomy, which Frances never mentioned when she was still alive. Frances became so famous after her death. More and more people became so fascinated by her story. Universal Pictures released a movie entitled Frances in 1982, starred by Jessica Lange, who just looked very much like her. It is a really sad story that she had gained more supporters after her death than when she was still alive. Frances was a real survivor, and if she only had a family that supports her truly, people around her that not only laughed, eat, and drink with her, but also truly care for her and love her, she would have been a very happy person. But then her story would be different.